The stars moved in ways they never should. Jake Morrison stared at the radar screen in the deep underground bunker of NORAD, watching dots appear where empty space had been moments before. Each dot was the size of a small city, and there were dozens of them sliding into Earth's solar system like sharks entering shallow water. "Sir, we're getting readings I've never seen before," called out technician Amy Peterson from her station. Her voice carried the kind of steady calm that came from years of training, but Jake could hear the tremor underneath. "These objects are massive, and they're not following any known physics." Jake moved to her console and looked at the data flowing across multiple screens. The objects were crystalline in structure, gleaming like carved diamonds against the black of space. They moved without any visible propulsion, defying everything humans understood about space travel. Each ship was beautiful in a terrifying way, like art designed by beings who had never known the concept of mercy. "Get me the president," Jake said, reaching for the red phone that connected directly to the White House. "And patch me through to every major defense installation on the planet. I think we're about to have visitors." High above Earth, Admiral Crick stood on the command deck of his flagship, looking down at the blue and green world below. His tall, thin form cast long shadows in the ship's crystalline interior. The species, the Zephyrians, had conquered 47 worlds in the past 3 centuries. This would be number 48, and by all accounts, it should be the easiest yet. "Report," Crix commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never been disobeyed. "The primitives have basic radar and simple chemical rockets," reported his tactical officer. "Their weapons are crude metal projectiles and primitive explosives. Their technology is roughly 3,000 years behind our own. Standard conquest protocols should apply." Crix nodded, satisfied. Every world followed the same pattern. Show overwhelming force, demonstrate superior technology, demand surrender. Most civilizations lasted less than 6 hours before their leaders agreed to submit. The longest had been the warrior clans of Vortax Prime, who had held out for 3 days before accepting the inevitable. "Begin standard broadcasting," Crix ordered. "Give them the usual terms." On Earth, President Lisa Carter sat in the Situation Room, surrounded by military advisors and scientists. The alien message had been transmitted simultaneously to every major government on the planet in perfect English, Mandarin, Russian, and dozens of other languages. "People of Earth," the message began, delivered in a voice that sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "We are the Zephyrian Empire. Your world has been selected for integration into our domain. You have 24 hours to surrender unconditionally. Comply, and your transition will be peaceful. Resist, and your civilization will be removed. This is not a negotiation." The room fell silent. General Paul Rodriguez, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, was the first to speak. "Madam President, our initial assessment suggests they have at least 50 large ships in orbit. Each one appears to be several miles long. We've never seen technology like this." "What are our options?" Carter asked, though she already suspected. "The answer, honestly? We're outgunned by a factor I can't even calculate," Rodriguez replied. "But that doesn't mean we're out of options. Americans don't surrender to bullies, no matter how big they are." Dr. Amy Peterson, who had been hastily promoted from NORAD, technician to the president's science advisor, spoke up from her seat at the table. "Madam President, I've been analyzing their communication patterns. These beings have clearly studied our languages and cultures, but I think they've misunderstood something fundamental about human nature." "Explain," Carter said. "Every other species they've conquered probably made rational decisions based on survival odds. Look at the mathematics. Accept defeat. Preserve what you can. But humans don't always make rational decisions. We make emotional ones. Sometimes we fight even when we know we can't win." Across the globe, similar conversations were taking place. In Beijing, Premier Chen examined satellite photos of the alien fleet. In Moscow, President Volkov called an emergency meeting of his Defense Council. In London, Prime Minister Davies authorized the activation of every military asset in the British Isles. But it wasn't just the leaders who were making decisions. In small towns and big cities, ordinary people looked up at the night sky where the alien ships hung like new stars, and they made their own choices about what came next. Dan Phillips, a construction foreman in Denver, stood in his backyard with his neighbors, watching the alien ships through binoculars. Well, he said after a long silence, "I guess they picked the wrong planet to mess with." Mary Foster, a third-grade teacher in Ohio, was helping her students evacuate the school when one of them asked if the aliens were going to hurt them. She knelt down to the child's level and said, "Honey, there are a lot of good people working. Very hard to make sure that doesn't happen. If those good people need our help, we'll help them." The first attack came at dawn, just as the 24-hour deadline expired. Brilliant beams of blue-white energy lanced down from the alien ships, striking military installations around the world. The Pentagon's outer rings disappeared in a flash of superheated air. RAF bases across England were reduced to smoking craters. Naval bases in Japan, Russia, and California simply ceased to exist. But then something happened that Admiral Crix had never seen before in 47 conquests. Instead of immediate surrender, every remaining military installation on the planet opened fire simultaneously. Missiles rose from hidden silos like angry hornets. Fighter jets screamed up from underground hangars that had survived the initial bombardment. Artillery pieces that should have been destroyed kept firing from positions the aliens hadn't even known existed. Captain Rick Johnson pushed his F2 Raptor through a climb that should have torn the wings off, heading straight for the massive alien ship hovering over Washington. His radio crackled with similar reports from pilots around the world. "This is Falcon Leader," he broadcast on the open channel. "If we're going down, we're taking some of them with us. All units, weapons free. Show these things what humans do when someone tries to take our home." The alien shields absorbed the first wave of attacks easily, just as they had against every other species. But the second wave hit before the shields could fully recharge. Then the third wave. The fourth. The attacks kept coming in numbers that defied tactical sense. Admiral Crix watched his tactical displays in growing confusion. His ship's computers had calculated that the primitive humans possessed perhaps 200 military aircraft. The count had already passed 500 and was still climbing. "How many weapons do these creatures possess?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir," his tactical officer replied, for the first time in his career unable to provide a definitive answer. "They appear to be converting civilian aircraft for military use. And, sir, we're detecting weapons fire from positions our scans indicated were purely civilian areas." On Earth, the impossible was happening. Crop dusters fitted with improvised rockets were attacking alien scouts. Police helicopters carrying military-grade weapons were engaging enemy fighters. Civilian boats loaded with surface-to-air missiles were firing from every major harbor. Jake Morrison, now coordinating the defense from Norb's backup facility, watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. "They wanted to see what humans do when we're threatened," he muttered. Well, now they know. The aliens had expected a quick, clean conquest. Instead, they found themselves fighting an entire planet that had decided, against all logic and military doctrine, that surrender was not an option. 3 days into the invasion, the holographic display showed Earth below, still burning in dozens of places, but not surrendering, not even close to surrendering. "Explain to me how a primitive species is still fighting," Crix demanded, his crystalline features reflecting the light from the tactical displays. "Our sensors show their major military installations destroyed. Their governments should have collapsed. Where are these attacks coming from?" His tactical officer, Commander Vex, gestured at the swirling data on the screens. "Sir, the humans appear to be fighting in a way we have never encountered. They are not following any recognizable military doctrine. Small groups attack our positions, then disappear. They use their own damaged aircraft as weapons, ramming our ships. They fight without central command." "That's impossible," Crix replied. "No species can coordinate attacks without proper leadership and communication systems. Nevertheless, sir, it is happening." Captain Rick Johnson pulled his damaged F-22 into a steep dive, smoke trailing from his left engine. Below him, a Zephyrian patrol ship hung motionless over downtown Chicago, its shields glowing blue against the morning sky. His missiles were gone, his cannon nearly empty, but he still had one weapon left. Chicago Tower, this is Falcon Leader, he spoke into his radio. Knowing the tower was probably gone but hoping someone was listening, going to try something new, he aimed his fighter directly at the alien. Ship's shield generator, visible as a glowing dome on the vessel's underside. Instead of trying to penetrate the shield with weapons, he planned to overwhelm it with kinetic energy. At 500 miles per hour, his 10-ton aircraft would hit. With the force of a small bomb, the alien shields were designed to absorb energy weapons and deflect small projectiles. They were not designed for a human pilot willing to turn his entire fighter into a missile. Ricks, two slammed into the shield at maximum speed. The barrier held for exactly 2 seconds before collapsing in a cascade of blue sparks. The fighter continued through, striking the alien ship's hull and tearing a massive hole in its side. The patrol ship wobbled and crashed into Lake Michigan in a tower of steam and spray, 200 miles away. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison watched the tactical feed from NORAD's backup facility. "Did you see that?" he called out to Dr. Amy Peterson, who was working at a nearby console. "I saw it," she replied grimly. "And more importantly, so did every pilot still flying. We just learned something important about their shields." "What's that?" "They have limits. They reset slowly between impacts. If we hit them fast enough and hard enough, they fail." Within hours, the news spread through every surviving military unit on Earth, not through official channels, which had been largely destroyed, but through radio chatter, cell phone calls, and internet posts. Pilots began coordinating attacks in ways that confused the aliens completely. In Los Angeles, National Guard pilot Sarah Williams led a squadron of civilian planes converted into fighters, crop dusters, news helicopters, even a wealthy businessman's private jet, all loaded with whatever weapons they could carry. They attacked a Zephyrian destroyer in waves, each plane striking the same section of shield, within seconds of each other. The alien ship's shields failed after the 7th impact. The 8th plane, a vintage World War II fighter piloted by a 70-year-old veteran named Frank Miller, put its entire bomb load directly into the ship's main weapon. The destroyer went down in flames, crashing into the Pacific Ocean. On the ground, the resistance was equally chaotic and equally effective. Don Phillips had organized his construction crew into a guerrilla unit that used their knowledge of Denver's underground tunnels to stage hit-and-run attacks on alien patrols. They had no military training, but they knew every pipe, every cable, and every maintenance shaft in the city. Remember, Don told his crew as they prepared for another raid, "We're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to make them hurt enough that they leave." They emerged from storm drains behind an alien patrol, hit the enemy with improvised explosives and hunting rifles, then disappeared back underground before the aliens could respond. It was working. The patrol routes were getting shorter, more cautious. Mary Foster had turned her elementary school into a coordination center for civilian resistance in rural Ohio. Teachers, parents, and local farmers worked together to track alien movements and coordinate supply runs to other resistance cells. She stood in what used to be her classroom, now filled with radio equipment and ammunition, talking to similar groups across 3 states. "The key is staying mobile," she explained to a farmer whose barn had been converted into a weapons cache. "They expect us to defend fixed positions. Instead, we hit them and move. Make them chase ghosts." The aliens were indeed chasing ghosts. Admiral Crix watched his forces spread thinner and thinner across the planet's surface, trying to maintain control of areas that seemed secure one day and hostile the next. His ships reported attacks from cities that his sensors showed as completely destroyed. "How many humans are actually fighting?" he asked Commander Vex during their daily briefing. "Unknown, sir. Our initial estimate suggested perhaps 1% of their population had military training. Current analysis suggests that number is meaningless. They appear to be turning their entire civilian population into combatants." "That's impossible. Civilians cannot fight trained soldiers." "Sir, with respect, these humans do not appear to follow standard definitions of possible or impossible." The truth was becoming clear to both sides. The humans were not fighting a conventional war. were fighting a war of pure stubbornness, using every resource they had and some they invented on the spot. Factory workers were building weapons from industrial equipment. Scientists were reverse engineering captured alien technology. Children were serving as scouts and messengers. Dr. Doe. Amy Peterson made a breakthrough when she finally gained access to a damaged alien communication device. After 3 days of analysis, she understood how the Zephyrian computer systems worked. They're incredibly sophisticated, she explained to President Carter during a secure video call. But they rely entirely on predictive algorithms. Their computers analyze enemy behavior patterns and calculate optimal responses. The problem is, human behavior doesn't follow patterns they can predict. Explain, Carter said from her mobile command center, currently hidden in a converted subway tunnel beneath Washington. Their systems freeze up trying to calculate our next move. Like when Captain Johnson rammed that patrol ship. Their computers are still trying to figure out why a pilot would sacrifice himself and his aircraft for minimal strategic gain. Because it wasn't minimal to us, Carter replied. It was one more alien ship that couldn't hurt our people. Exactly. That kind of thinking is breaking their systems. We need to be more unpredictable, not less. The order went out through every available channel, ignore military doctrine, ignore rational tactics, fight like your family's lives depend on it, because they did. The effect was immediate. Alien patrols found themselves under attack from directions that made no sense. A group of teenagers with fireworks drove the aliens out of Seattle's downtown. A retirement home full of military veterans held off an alien assault for 6 hours using hunting rifles and pure determination. General Paul Rodriguez, coordinating resistance from a hidden base in Colorado, watched the reports come in with amazement. They came here expecting to fight soldiers, he told his staff. Instead, they're fighting 300 million Americans who have decided they'd rather die than quit. This was not like conquering the disciplined armies of Vortex Prime or the logical counselors of the Nexus worlds. This was like trying to conquer a planet full of warriors who had no concept of acceptable losses or strategic retreat. For the first time in his long military career, he began to consider the possibility that the Zephyrian Empire might lose. 2 weeks after the invasion began, everything changed because of a crashed alien ship outside. Denver and a sergeant who refused to follow orders, Sergeant Linda Hayes, crouched in the tall grass, watching the smoking wreckage of the Zephyrian scout ship through her binoculars. Her orders were simple: secure the perimeter and wait for the science team to arrive. But Linda had never been good at waiting, especially when there might be something useful inside that wreck. Stay here and keep watch, she told her squad. If I'm not back in 30 minutes, call it in. Sarge, that's not what command ordered, Private Kevin Moore replied, concern clear in his voice. Command isn't here, Linda said, checking her rifle one more time. And that ship might have answers. We need. She moved toward the wreck carefully, expecting traps or automated defenses. Instead, she found something unexpected. The ship was still partially functional, its crystalline walls glowing with a soft blue light. Even more surprising, the alien pilot was still alive. The Zephyrian looked up at her with large, dark eyes that seemed to hold ancient sadness. It spoke in perfect English, its voice like wind through crystal chimes. You should not be here, human. My ship will self-destruct soon to prevent capture. How soon? Linda asked, keeping her rifle trained on the alien. Perhaps 10 of your minutes. Linda looked around the ship's interior, taking in the flowing lines and impossible angles of the alien technology. Everything looked organic, like it had been. Grown rather than built. Can you stop it? The alien tilted its head, clearly confused by the question. Why would I stop it? It is protocol. No technology must fall into primitive hands, because maybe we're not as primitive as you think, Linda replied. And maybe you're tired of following protocols that get your people killed. Something in her voice made the alien pause, studied her face for a long moment, then made a decision that would change the course of the war. My name is Czar, the alien said, and you are correct. I am tired of watching worlds burn. Czar showed Linda how to disable the self-destruct, then began explaining how the ship's systems worked. The technology was beyond anything humans had imagined, but the principles were surprisingly understandable. The ship's computer was like a living thing, responding to thought and emotion as much as direct commands. Your people fight with passion, Zar explained as Linda carefully examined the control interface. Our technology responds to that. It was not designed for the cold calculation our empire has become. By the time the science team arrived, Linda had learned enough to pilot the alien fighter at a basic level. Dr. Amy Peterson, now leading the research effort, was amazed at what one stubborn sergeant had accomplished. "This is incredible," Amy said, running her hands over the ship's controls. "The interface is almost intuitive. It's like it wants to be understood." "According to Zar here," Linda said, gesturing to the alien who had agreed to help them, their original people were more like humans, emotional, creative, unpredictable. The Empire changed them, made them cold and efficient. And that efficiency is their weakness, Amy realized. They've programmed themselves out of the very qualities that made their technology work in the first place. News of the captured ship spread quickly through the resistance network. Within days, similar opportunities arose around the world. A damaged Ephorian fighter landed in the Australian outback, where a team of mechanics and a physics professor managed to get it flying again. Another crashed in the Amazon rainforest, where local tribes and Brazilian special forces learned its secrets together. But the real breakthrough came when pilot Michelle Clark took one of the captured fighters into combat for the first time. Michelle had been flying crop dusters before the invasion, spraying fields in Kansas with pesticide. Now she found herself in the cockpit of an alien ship, preparing to engage a Zephyrian patrol over what used to be Chicago. The ship's controls felt strange under her hands, responding to her thoughts and emotions in ways that no human aircraft ever had. "This is Wildcard," she radioed to the other human pilots in the area. "Going in to test our new toy." The Zephyrian patrol consisted of 3 ships, flying in a perfect triangular formation that their computers had calculated as optimal for mutual defense. What their computers had not calculated was what happened when Michelle Clark got angry. She dove at the lead ship with the fury of someone who had watched her hometown burn, pulling maneuvers that the alien ship's original programming had never intended. The craft responded to her rage, becoming faster and more agile than it had ever been under Zephyrian control. "What is she doing?" asked Captain Rick Johnson, watching from his position in a rebuilt F-22. "I think she's making that ship angry too," replied Sarah Williams from her converted news helicopter. Michelle's captured fighter slammed into the Zephyrian formation like a meteor, scattering the perfectly organized patrol. The alien ships tried to respond with their calculated defensive patterns, but Michelle was fighting with pure human instinct, making decisions faster than their computers could predict. One by one, the patrol ships fell when the last one crashed. Into Lake Michigan, Michelle's voice came over the radio with barely contained excitement. "Command, this is Wildcard. The alien ships work better when humans fly them. I repeat, these things actually work better when we're the ones in control." The implications hit the resistance leadership like a thunderbolt. Not only could humans learn to use alien technology, they could use it better than the aliens themselves. General Paul Rodriguez convened an emergency meeting of all surviving commanders. The meeting took place in an abandoned subway station beneath New York, with participants joining by radio from hidden bases around the world. People were looking at a complete reversal of the tactical situation, Rodriguez announced. "Our analysis suggests that Zephyrian technology was originally designed by a species much more like humans than like what the Zephyrians had become." President Carter's voice crackled over the secure channel from her mobile command post. "What are you saying, General? Saying we can beat them with their own weapons, Madam President? Not just beat them? We can outfight them using technology they think they understand better than we do." Across the planet, the tide of war began to shift. Human pilots and captured alien fighters started winning dogfights that should have been impossible. Teams using recovered Zephyrian weapons found them more effective in human hands than they had been in alien ones. But the biggest change was in the aliens themselves. Admiral Crix watched his forces grow increasingly demoralized as reports came in of humans not just using Zephyrian technology, but improving it. Sir, Commander Vex reported during their daily briefing, we've lost contact with 3 more patrol groups. Survivors report that the humans are flying our own ships against us and flying them better than our own pilots. That's impossible, Crix insisted, though his voice lacked its usual certainty. Sir, the humans appear to be impossible by definition. On the bridge of his flagship, Crix stared down at the blue world that had defied every calculation, broken every precedent, and shattered every assumption his people had about warfare and conquest. For the first time in his life, he began to wonder if the Zephyrian Empire had chosen the wrong planet to invade, in her hidden command center. President Carter looked at the latest intelligence reports with grim satisfaction. The humans were still outnumbered, still outgunned, but for the first time since the invasion began. They were not just surviving, they were winning. Admiral Crix stood alone on his command deck, staring at the planet that had destroyed everything he thought he knew about war. 3 weeks ago, he had commanded the most powerful invasion fleet in Zephyrian history. Now half his ships were debris floating in Earth's orbit, and the other half were preparing to retreat. But retreat was no longer an option. The High Command had sent their final orders. Destroy the human world completely, or face execution for the greatest military failure. In Imperial history, the planet's sterilization weapon was charging, a massive orbital cannon that would turn Earth's surface into molten glass. How long until the weapon is ready? Crix asked his tactical officer. 6 hours, sir, Commander Vex replied. Our scans show the humans are launching everything they have left. Every ship, every fighter, every converted civilian craft. They know what we're planning. Of course they do, Crix said quietly. They always know. Far below, in a converted subway tunnel beneath Washington, President Carter stood before a wall of screens, showing the final desperate preparations. Every human pilot who could still fly was preparing for the last battle. The numbers were stark. Humanity had perhaps 200 operational aircraft against over 50 massive alien warships. Madam President General Rodriguez said, "We estimate a 5% chance of success." "What are the odds if we surrender?" Carter asked. 0%. They're past negotiation now. It's extinction or victory. Carter nodded and picked up the radio transmitter that would broadcast to every resistant cell on Earth. "People of Earth, this is your president. In 6 hours, the aliens will fire a weapon that will destroy our world. We have one chance to stop them. I won't lie to you about the odds. Most of us won't survive the next few hours. But if we do nothing, none of us will." She paused, looking around at the faces of the people who had kept fighting when any rational species would have surrendered weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, they came here expecting easy conquest. Instead, they found something they'd never encountered before, a species too stubborn to know when we're beaten. Today, we show them the final lesson about humanity. We don't quit. We don't surrender, and we sure as hell don't go quietly. The final assault began at dawn. Every human aircraft that could still fly rose from hidden bases, converted civilian fields, and improvised landing strips. Captured alien fighters flew alongside, crop dusters fitted with missiles. Military jets shared the sky with news helicopters carrying rockets. Leading the charge was Admiral Jake Morrison. Newly promoted and flying a captured Zephyrian command ship, beside him flew Michelle Clark and her alien fighter, Sarah Williams. In her converted news helicopter, and Rick Johnson in an F-22 that had been rebuilt 3 times, all units. This is Sky Leader, Jake broadcast on the open channel. Target is the big ugly cannon on the flagship. We punch through their defense line, hit that weapon, and hope it takes the whole ship with it. Copy that, Sky Leader, Michelle replied, just like old times, except with better odds. "These are better odds?" asked Rick. "Hey, we're still breathing, aren't we?" The Zephyrian fleet moved to intercept them in perfect formation. Their ships arranged in geometric patterns that their computers calculated as optimal for defense. What their computers couldn't calculate was human desperation. The first wave of human fighters hit the alien line like a hammer blow. Ships exploded, shields failed, and the perfect formations dissolved into chaos. But for every alien ship destroyed, 3 human craft were lost. The math was simple and brutal. Second wave, go. Jake commanded as his ship's hull glowed from plasma fire. Third wave, follow them in. Wave after wave of human fighters threw themselves at the alien defenses. The sky filled with fire and debris as ships from both sides died in the cold vacuum of space. But slowly, impossibly, the humans were winning. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Crix watched his fleet crumble under the relentless human assault. His ships were superior in every way, but there were always more humans coming. Always another wave of fighters willing to die to protect their world. "Sir, the sterilization weapon is ready to fire," Commander Vex reported.
Do it!
Crix ordered. "End this." The massive cannon began to glow with deadly energy. In 60 seconds, it would fire a beam capable of cracking continents. But in that same 60 seconds, the last wave of human fighters reached the flagship. Sarah Williams looked at the massive weapon charging just ahead of her damaged helicopter and made a decision that would echo across the galaxy for generations. "Units, this is Phoenix." She broadcast on every frequency. "I have a clear shot at the main weapon. Tell my family I love them." She pushed her helicopter into a dive that would take her directly into the cannon's charging chamber. Behind her, every other human pilot made the same choice. Instead of trying to survive the battle, they all aimed for the weapon that would destroy their world. "Phoenix, this is Sky Leader," Jake's voice crackled over the radio. "We're right behind you, all of us," added Michelle. "Every damn one of us," confirmed Rick. The Zephyrian gunners tried to stop them, but there were too many targets coming too fast. Sarah's helicopter struck the weapon first, followed by a captured alien fighter. Then an F-22, then a crop duster, then a news van that someone had somehow gotten into space. The orbital cannon exploded in a chain reaction that tore through the flagship's hull. Secondary explosions ripped through the ship's power core, and Admiral Crix's command vessel broke apart in a fireball visible from the planet's surface. The blast took out half the remaining Spherian fleet. The survivors, leaderless and demoralized, began to retreat from Earth's orbit. On the planet below, President Carter watched the alien ships disappear into the darkness of space and felt something she hadn't experienced in weeks: hope. But the real impact of Earth's victory was being felt far beyond the solar system. Across the galaxy, alien civilizations that had lived in fear of the Zephyrian Empire for centuries were receiving reports that seemed impossible. The Ethereal Collective, ancient observers who had watched galactic politics for millions of years, issued their first official statement in recorded history. "We have witnessed the birth of something unprecedented, a species that chooses extinction over submission." On the world of Vortax Prime, conquered by the Zephyrians 50 years earlier, warrior clans began sharpening weapons they hadn't touched in decades. In the Nexus systems, civilian populations whispered about the small planet that had done the impossible: the Galactic Council convened emergency sessions as reports arrived of uprisings on a dozen worlds, all inspired by humanity's example. The age of easy conquest was over. Dr. Amy Peterson, now Earth's first ambassador to the galaxy, stood in what had been Norrit's command center, now converted into a diplomatic facility. Through the reinforced windows, she could see construction. Crews working to rebuild the cities. In the distance, captured alien ships sat alongside human aircraft, both being studied and improved. "Ambassador," her aide called out, "we're receiving diplomatic requests from 14 different alien civilizations. They all want to establish relations with Earth." Amy smiled, remembering the message she had prepared for this moment. "Them our standard response. Welcome to Earth. We hope you come in peace, because we've proven what happens when you don't." The galaxy had watched in horror, not at humanity's cruelty, but at their impossible determination. And now that same galaxy was learning a new truth: some species simply cannot be conquered. No matter how primitive they might appear, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of Earth's first captured alien warship, looking out at the stars. With the same determination that had saved his world, the galaxy might have watched in horror. But they had also learned that humans would fight for their freedom until the very last breath. And sometimes, that was enough.